Last Saturday, my boyfriend and I visited the town of Ellsworth in Maine, and they have an antique store right on the main street of town that I hadn't gone to for years. But a couple of years ago, I went in there, and I found out that they regularly circulate a lot of vinyl records. And I find some really amazing things there that I know about. And here is a stash right here of the vinyl records that I picked up last week. My boyfriend has his own stash, but this is mine. And there's also another album toward the end of this video that I actually got in Fairfield, but didn't include it in my video about my Fairfield stash. And again, I ordered them all by year, so it gives you a sense of continuity. The first one is The Impressions, We're a Winner. I love that song. You know, I love Curtis Mayfield. Me and my friend Henry Hopkins, shout out to Henry again. Really are great admirers of Curtis Mayfield's music and lyrics. This is really a very interesting album. The last track on it is a cover of Jimmy Webb's and Johnny Rivers' Up, Up and Away, made popular by the Fifth Dimension. It's a very poppy song, not exactly the kind of thing that you would normally hear, or I'd normally hear, sung by one of the originators of soul music in America. Joe Cocker, self-titled 1972 album, half of it live, half of it in the studio. There's the inside of that album, just pictures on safety film. There's the back cover of that album. The next album is Roger Daltrey's solo record, Ride a Rock Horse. This is from 1975. I've heard some mixed things about this record, but I wanted some Roger Daltrey solo music outside The Who, and I love this cover where he's braying centaur. There's actually, I think I'm just going to take this out because the label might be, it's just an RCA label, it's no big deal, but it does come with a lyric sheet. I'll show you a little bit of that. This next album is an album by the Shy Lights from 1975 that I never actually heard of before. And it's an excellent album. You know, I primarily know them for, you know, For Goodness Sakes, Give More Power to the People, and, you know, Have You Seen Her? But this is a really good album. Really well done. Slave, The Hardness of the World. I've been looking all over for this since I found a great copy of it at the Goodwill, 12, 13 years ago, and I didn't even have a buck to buy it, but this was an amazing find. I love all the tracks on this album. It's an intense funk record for the most part. Volcano Rupture is an intense, amazing song. I want to show you the label on this. It's the purple cotillion label. Automatic Man. To be honest, I bought this album purely for the cover. I didn't know about the people who were on it at all. I still got to do some research on this group. But they're a multiracial group, and they kind of cross the line between progressive rock and jazz fusion funk. Kind of like the Jan Hammer group or David Sancious and Tone. The cover is slightly raised in the middle, this kind of alien face. This is from 1976. Barry White, Sings for Someone You Love. This is an album that I have, of course, debated picking up for a very long time. But I've heard so many good cuts from this. It's from 1977. 20th Century. I think I've already showed you that label on other Barry White albums I've reviewed. This is a 12-inch disco single from 1978 from Marvin Gaye's album Here My Dear, and a great song I love on the album called A Funky Space Reincarnation, and this has an instrumental on it. I don't know if you can see it, but I love the music of that song. The lyrics are great, but I love the music, so an instrumental of that would just be an amazing thing to have, so I was happy to find that. Elton John, Victim of Love. To a lot of people, this is his absolute worst album. It was produced with Pete Bellotte, who was involved with Giorgio Moroder in the Munich Machine Productions. This is basically his disco album. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with why it's condemned, but I've heard some cuts on this, and they're actually really good. I mean, it's Elton John, you know. Most of what he does has some great quality. A lot of artists. Kim Wilde, 1981. This is the album that has her big hit, Kids in America, on it. I was happy to find this on vinyl. It's on EMI America. Melissa Manchester, Hey Ricky. I have this album on cassette for a long time, but I always wanted a good copy on vinyl, and this is in really great condition. I love that song, and I really love this album too. A Motel album I didn't have. That's from 1982, by the way. This Motels album is from 1985, and it's called Shock. Getting into the Motels a lot in the last year or so. Eddie Murphy, How Could It Be? I actually streamed this whole album once. I know Party All the Time, and sometimes I think that it's almost fashionable just to hate this album because it's a comedian making a record. But, you know, if you look on it, Rick James produced that. Stevie Wonder was involved in this album. You know, and a lot of their studio musicians played on it. So even though Eddie Murphy may not be the world's greatest singer, you know, the music backing him up was just absolutely fantastic, you know. So I think that makes up for any issues he might have had. Laura Branigan, Touch. You know, we're getting into the late 80s here. This is actually the only Laura Branigan album so far that I did not have in any format. I have her last one from 1992 or 3 that I just picked up. So this kind of completes my Laura Branigan collection. And that's from the Ellsworth store. This is that Stray that I actually picked up at Fairfield, Stan Campbell. I just like the cover. It was kind of an interesting photograph, a portrait, a shadow. And the name looked kind of familiar. Turns out he was a singer for The Specials when they released an album called In the Studio under the name of The Special AKA. And this is Stan Campbell's solo album from 1987. It's funny how some of these records, when you actually buy them, and in the internet age, they lead you to finding out more about them through buying things for the cover or some small level of familiarity. So those are my records that I got in Ellsworth for the most part. And until next time, enjoy your music and peace.